and welcome to Drunk Dog Creative. Today we're going to show you how to make one of the cards in the Monochrome Madness Multimake. This is where I made 20 cards in an hour, each of them with a monochrome theme, so one color plus white. One of the things I love about Stampin' Up! Is how the colors coordinate. The inks, the papers, the embellishments, the markers all match, which makes it so easy. So now I'm going to show you how to make one of the cards from the Monochrome Madness Multimake. What you need to cut is your card base, and I've used Stampin' Up's basic white thick card, and I use that for all my card bases that are white because it's that little bit extra thicker. So you cut that to 194 by 210 millimeters. And then whatever color you're using, and I'm using the new Pebbled Path from the 2023 to 2025 In Color collection. You're going to cut that to 90 millimeters by 200 millimeters. Then you're going to have two card fronts. And these are again cut out of the white cardstock. One piece is 35 millimeters by 80 millimeters, and one is 145 millimeters by 80 millimeters. That's going to form the basis of your card. Now, I know not all of you are in Australia like I am, but I am a dual citizen, so I do speak American Imperial as well. And if you go to my blog post, all of the measurements are there in Imperial and in metrics. So we're going to take our piece of cardstock that's 145 by 80 millimeters, and we're going to emboss it with this folder. This is one of the new sets from Stampin' Up. It's a set of two called Geometric Patterns Embossing Folders. And I'm going to place my cardstock in it, and I'm going to line it up so it's nice and even and close the folder. And then I'm going to grab my mini cut and emboss machine, which is the perfect size to sit on my desk and do these smaller jobs. You can tell it's used a lot. I don't need those two folders, plates. I need the base plate and the embossing plate. So I'm going to make a sandwich with my embossing folder, and I'm just going to run it through the machine. That easy. Put my machine away and take the plates off, and there you have a beautifully embossed front piece ready to be used. The next thing I'm going to do is make my sentiment tag for the front of the card. So I'm going to take a scrap piece that's left over from cutting out the Pebbled Path card front, and I'm going to use my Lovely Labels punch, and I'm using my Lovely and Lasting Labels set. This unfortunately is discontinued, so use whatever sentiments and whatever stamps make your heart sing. I'm also going to need some white embossing powder, and I've got this great little embossing kit. If you're like me and your embossing powder gets everywhere, no matter how neat you try to be, this is the kit you need. It's got the heat-proof tweezers for holding your piece so you don't burn your hand. It's got this lovely brush to brush your embossing powder, and then your powder sits in here. You unscrew this and tap it back into your bowl. It's genius, and it's kept my workplace so much neater. I'm going to use Versamark and embossing powder to heat emboss my sentiment and a frame. There's a reason I do the embossing before I punch it out with the punch, which I'll get to in a minute. So I've got my stamps that I've picked out ready to go on my stamping blocks. I'm going to do this one first, and I'm going to get the Versamark, and I'm going to tap it on it and make sure I ink that really well. And you keep your Versamark closed. And I'm going to just stamp this, and it doesn't have to be lined up, doesn't have to be neat, because it's going to be cut out with a punch. And then I take my sentiment, and I work a little bit quickly so that it doesn't dry in between. This you do line up. So I'm going to line this up as carefully as I can with the light glaring and put that in the middle of the frame. And then I'm going to grab my little tray here and my embossing powder. And then flick the back of it to get as much of this off as you can. Now, one thing I forgot to use was the anti-static pad, but I got lucky this time. I'm going to put a little more there And just blow that off. You can also use the brush to flick bits away, but as we're going to punch this out, I'm not too worried. Take my heat-proof tweezers and my heat gun, and I'm just going to heat set this. And that's done. And then I can just pour this right back into the container. I can just use my brush to brush the rest of it in. And there you go, everything is back in the container. I'm going to set that aside just for a little while to let it set. Now it's time to stamp an image on this little 35 by 80 millimeter piece. And this goes on the left front of the card. Now, it's a small piece, and one of the things I really love doing is a technique called stamping off the page. So you can see that the stamp I've chosen from my set is quite big, and there's no way that it will all fit on there. But the point is to only stamp part of it, and you don't have to be precise or exact. You just have to put it down and stamp it, and then you'll get a partial image that will still look great. So again, I'm going to tap and get my Pebbled Path ink on my stamp. I'm going to put my piece of paper down, and I'm going to look through the stamp and kind of figure out where I want this to land, and then I'm just going to stamp. And of course it sticks to it because it's small, so I'm going to take it off. And there you've got a partial image that looks beautiful. I'm going to set that aside and just let that set. Now you can see that I've gotten ink on my paper. Right now I'm not worried about it, but if I was going to stamp other things and I didn't want that being picked up, I just tear this sheet of my pad off down to the next one. It's great. All right, now I'm going to punch out my sentiment label. And I'm going to do that with the Lovely Labels punch. And I love these punches because they lie flat. There's a mechanism to open it for when you need to use it. And there's a trick to this, and there's a reason I embossed it first. Instead of punching it out and having to line the stamp for the frame precisely, I've been able to emboss it. And what you do is you turn your punch over and you punch upside down, because now I can work out exactly where I want it to go. And I kind of half hold it and move it a little, and I just fiddle with it a bit till it's lined up how I want it. And that depends on how precise you are and how precise you want to be. Just fiddle till I get it pretty much where I want it. And you punch. And there's your label, and easy as. And that's why, close it back up, that's why I always emboss first. So I'm going to put some Stampin' Up! Dimensionals on the back of this because I want it to sit up off the paper a bit. These are honeycombed. They come in normal size, they come in black, and they come in a mini size. And these are a staple of my workroom. I have to have these at all times. They are brilliant. So I probably use more than I need to. I'm that person who puts extra tape and extra glue just to be sure. But I'm going to put these in the corners and another one in the middle. You go ahead and do it however you would normally do it. Use whatever you normally use. There, I've got the 5 of them on. So my sentiment is ready to go. Now that your pieces are made, it's time to assemble the card. I've got the Pebbled Path woven ribbon. Again, everything matches. I've made a little double bow out of some of it. Now there's a thing about bows. I am the world's worst bow tire. I'm terrible at it, and it's why I've not worked with ribbon before. But I recently discovered a little gadget called the Zutter Bow-It-All that made tying beautiful little bows so easy. There's another video on my blog about it. If you have trouble tying bows, check it out. All right, so I've got all my pieces. First thing I'm going to do is take the embossed piece. I'm going to set these just aside for now. I need to put some ribbon on that. Now I'm out of my Stampin' Seal, so I'm going back to my old Scotch ATG, and I'm going to put just an even strip of tape down the middle. Now some of you may use glue for your ribbons, you may use tape, whatever you do is fine, but I'm going to put a piece of ribbon down the middle, and I'm going to have it overhang each edge just a little, and I'm going to clip it, get that out of the way, and then I'm going to just put a little bit there for that to stick to, a little bit there for that to stick to. So now that's ready. So next part, we're going to take our card base and our mat, and we're going to put those together. However you do it is fine. I run tape around all four edges. And a little bit down the middle. And then I'm going to line that up as best I can to get that even all the way around. And that's that part done. Put that aside and grab your embossed piece again, and we're going to put this onto the card. So again, run your tape. And you notice I run the tape over the ribbon. There's a reason for that, keep the frayed ends in. And you can decide which side up you want it, whatever your embossing pattern is. And we're going to put it on so that it has a pretty even margin all the way around. And to fix it, and then we take the piece that we stamped our image on, and we're going to put that on our card too. And you're going to line it up so that it has the same margins on the three sides, and so it lines up with the top and bottom of the embossed piece. Always a little tricky and fiddly, but worth it. Okay, so that's how the front looks. Then we're going to just place our bow and our sentiment and decide kind of where along here you want them. I usually leave a little bit of a gap there and put that kind of near that end. So you just take your little pieces off of the dimensionals and just kind of line it where you want it and press it down. Now for affixing the ribbon, I always struggled with this when I did use little embellishments like ribbons or beads. But the mini glue dots are phenomenal for this, and you can see how well used this package is. I have the multi-tool, which has the putty pickup at this end, and the other end has both a blade and a pick, and there's other accessories for it. I just find it so handy to have everything in one. You can use the blade or the pick. I tend to use the pick, even though sometimes it pulls the dot out of shape. And you just pick the dot up, and you go to the back of the bow, and you put it kind of on that knot there. And turn it over and put it right on the ribbon, and your bow is there. And then you take some really sharp little scissors, and you cut this whatever length you want, if it needs it. And there is your monochrome card. Now here's a bit of a bonus. Because the card base is white, you really could just write what you want to write on the inside and leave it like that. But if you want to give it just a little bit something extra, you can create a double layer for the inside as well. And I'm going to show you that now. I've cut a piece of the pebbled path to 90 millimeters by 200 millimeters, the same as the mat on the front. And I've cut a piece of white that's 145 millimeters by 80 millimeters. This isn't the thick white, this is a normal white cardstock. It doesn't need to be the thick one to write on. And I'm going to take the trio punch. Now this I love because it does several things. It has a ribbon slot that you can punch into anything to feed a ribbon through. It has a fancy curved corner and a straight corner. This is what the fancy curved corner looks like. So it creates this really interesting pattern. But for this card, I'm going to keep it simple and use this corner one. And you're going to punch all 4 corners of both of these pieces. So. And there's the next piece. Now you can always keep these little bits and use them as confetti or triangles, or do what you want to do. So that's the trio punch, and I find that one I use all the time. Then I'm going to take my glue tape and I'm going to just run some double adhesive on the back of the white, and I'm going to layer these together. Try to get it even all the way around. Then I'm going to bring my card back and I'm going to layer the pebbled path with some glue tape. A little closer to the edge. I'm going to open my card up and I'm going to try to center that pretty evenly. Using the crease as a guide for straightness really helps. I'm going to put that in, and it just gives quite a nicer finish to the inside. So there's your front, and there's your inside. And there's your card finished.